The North Atlantic in January is not water. It is a living, grinding entity, a realm of absolute cold and crushing silence, where the pressure at depth could fold a man into pulp in seconds. Here, beneath the surface, where sunlight dies just meters down, the temperature hovers near freezing. Thermal layers shift and twist like invisible curtains, bending sound into corridors and dead zones. This is not a battlefield. It is a hunting ground. And right now, something is moving through it that shouldn't be there. The Shadow Fleet. That's what Western intelligence has been calling them for months now. A ragtag armada of aging oil tankers, their hull numbers scraped off, their transponders dark, their flags belonging to nations that exist only on paper. They are ghosts in their own right, vessels purchased through shell companies in Dubai, registered in Liberia or Panama, crewed by men who ask no questions and expect no answers. Their cargo, Russian crude oil, refined petroleum, diesel, fuel. Their destination, Cuba. The last ember of the Soviet dream, now starving, now desperate. These tankers move in silence across the mid-Atlantic ridge, following routes that zigzag through international waters, avoiding the surveillance corridors of NATO patrol aircraft. They believe the ocean is vast enough to hide them. They believe that in a sea covering 70 million square kilometers, a handful of submarines cannot possibly find them all. They are catastrophically wrong. Because beneath the keel of every single one of these tankers, sitting in the acoustic shadow where their own engine noise drowns out everything else, is something far more patient, far more precise. The Virginia-class attack submarine, a machine designed not to fight, but to disappear. And it has been following them for weeks. The protocol has a name, though it exists in no official manual, appears in no congressional briefing, and will never be spoken aloud in any Pentagon press conference. The operators call it ghosting. The technical term, buried in classified acoustic warfare documents, is hull shadow acoustic masking. But the principle is brutally simple. You don't hunt the tanker. You become its shadow. A Virginia-class submarine is not what most people imagine when they think of underwater warfare. It is not a lumbering giant firing torpedoes in dramatic arcs. It is a sensor platform wrapped in silence, a listening post that happens to be capable of traveling at 30+ knots beneath the waves. Its anechoic coating, layers of rubberized tiles covering every square inch of the hull, absorbs incoming sonar pings like a sponge drinking water. Its pump-jet propulsion system eliminates the telltale cavitation noise of traditional propellers. At low speeds, a Virginia-class submarine produces less sound than a pod of migrating whales, but sound is only half the equation. The real genius of the ghosting protocol lies in positioning. Every surface ship, every tanker, every cargo vessel creates what acoustic engineers call a noise cone. A downward projecting column of sound generated by the churning of its propellers, the vibration of its engine, the friction of water against its hull. For a fully loaded oil tanker pushing through moderate seas, that noise cone extends downward like a column of static, masking everything beneath it. Sonar systems on the surface cannot penetrate their own noise. It's the acoustic equivalent of trying to hear a whisper while standing next to a jet engine. So the submarine doesn't follow from behind. It doesn't trail at a safe distance. It slides directly beneath the tanker's hull, matching its speed, maintaining a precise depth separation of 50 to 70 meters. At this range, the tanker's own propeller wash becomes the submarine's camouflage. The submarine isn't hiding from the tanker. It is hiding inside the tanker's acoustic signature. To any passive sonar system listening from a distance, there is only one contact: the tanker itself. The submarine has ceased to exist. This is not a new concept. Soviet submarines practiced similar techniques during the Cold War, nestling beneath American carrier groups close enough to touch. But the technology available in 2026 has refined it into something approaching surgical precision. The Virginia-class boats carry an array of sensors that would have seemed like science fiction a generation ago. fiber optic towed arrays that can detect the specific harmonic signature of a ship's engine from 50 kilometers away. Hull-mounted hydrophones capable of isolating the sound of a single bolt vibrating inside a tanker's engine room. AI-assisted tracking algorithms that can predict a target's course and speed based on ocean current data and propeller efficiency models. Once the submarine has established its shadow position, the real work begins. The Russian tankers, for all their precautions, are still commercial vessels at heart. They still rely on satellite navigation, depth sounders, forward-looking sonar to avoid underwater obstacles. These systems are not hardened against electronic warfare. They were never designed to operate in a contested environment, and that is their fatal vulnerability. The divers come at night, if they come at all. More often, it's the autonomous underwater vehicles, UUVs, cylindrical drones the size of a torpedo, launched from the submarine's lockout trunk, guided by AI navigation and controlled remotely from the submarine's combat information center. They move through the water with the silence of a predator, their electric motors producing less noise than the ambient sound of the ocean itself. Their mission is not destruction, it is deception. The UUV positions itself near the tanker's hull-mounted sensors, the depth sounder, the forward obstacle detection sonar, and begins transmitting localized acoustic pulses. Not loud enough to be detected by surface ships or aircraft, not powerful enough to trigger any alarms, just precise, carefully modulated pulses designed to mimic the acoustic signature of shallow water, of a reef, of a coastline where none exists. The tanker's navigation system, receiving this false data, recalculates. It believes suddenly that the ocean floor is rising, that the depth beneath the keel, which should be 3,000 meters, is now reading 200, 100, 50. The alarms begin to sound. The captain, startled from sleep, rushes to the bridge. The helmsman is already shouting. The depth sounder is screaming a warning that they are about to run aground in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 300 kilometers from the nearest landmass. The captain has seconds to decide. Does he trust his instruments, which have never failed before, or does he trust his charts, which show open water for 1,000 kilometers in every direction? Panic is a vice that tightens with every second. The natural instinct, the instinct drilled into every mariner since the age of sail, is to turn, to reduce speed, to stop the ship before it tears its hull open on rocks that cannot possibly be there, and so the tanker stops. Engines cut to idle. Forward momentum bleeds away. The massive vessel wallows in the swells, dead in the water, while the captain and his officers crowd around the navigation console, arguing in Russian, checking and rechecking their instruments. Some captains, the bold or the foolish, will restart their engines and continue forward, trusting their charts. These captains will, an hour later, experience the phenomenon again. And again. And eventually, after the third or fourth phantom reef appears on their depth sounders, they will make the only rational decision. They will turn back. Others, the cautious ones, will stop and wait for daylight, hoping to visually confirm their position. They will sit dead in the water for hours, burning fuel while their crew scans the horizon for landmarks that will never appear. And when dawn comes, when the sea remains empty, and the depth sounder returns to normal, they will restart their engines and continue, only to have the phantom return the next night. Some tankers, the truly unlucky ones, will report a different phenomenon. Their navigation systems will begin to drift. The GPS coordinates, usually reliable to within a meter, will suddenly show them 50 kilometers off course. Then 100. The ship's autopilot, attempting to correct, will steer them in circles. By the time the crew realizes what is happening, they have burned precious fuel and wasted days of travel time, and they will have no explanation for what went wrong. This is technical strangulation. Not the brutal, visible blockade of warships and boarding parties, but something far more insidious. A form of warfare that leaves no wreckage, no bodies, no evidence. The tankers are not sunk. They are not captured. They simply stop. They turn back, they arrive late, or they don't arrive at all. And the submarine, the silent architect of their confusion, remains invisible. It does not fire a weapon. It does not reveal itself. It simply waits, hovering in the darkness beneath the tanker's hull until the target has been sufficiently disrupted. Then it detaches, slipping away into the depths, already moving toward the next contact on the list. The panic in Moscow began in late December. At first it was dismissed as bad luck. A few tankers reporting navigation errors, equipment malfunctions, the kind of technical problems that are expected when operating aging vessels in harsh conditions. But then the reports began to multiply. Tankers leaving Murmansk or Arkhangelsk, bound for Havana, were turning back after only a few days at sea, citing unresolvable technical issues. Captains described phantom sonar contacts that appeared and vanished without warning. Depth sounders showing impossible readings. GPS systems that seemed to be feeding false data. Russian naval intelligence was baffled. There were no signs of physical interference. No American warships had been detected in the vicinity. No NATO patrol aircraft had made visual contact. The tankers themselves showed no evidence of sabotage. No limpet mines, no external devices attached to their hulls, and yet ship after ship was being turned back by an invisible hand. The technical experts were brought in. They examined the navigation systems, the sonar equipment, the satellite links. They found nothing. No signs of hacking, no malware, no electronic intrusion. The systems were functioning exactly as designed, which meant the problem was not in the equipment, it was in the environment itself. But how do you fight an environment that refuses to behave as it should? The Northern Fleet, responsible for protecting the Arctic and North Atlantic approaches, was tasked with providing escorts. Frigates and corvettes were dispatched to accompany the tankers, their active sonar systems sweeping the waters ahead and below. But active sonar is a double-edged sword. It reveals your position to every listening post within 100 kilometers, and more importantly, it is nearly useless against a target hiding directly beneath another vessel's hull. The sonar pulses reflect off the tanker's own keel, creating a blind spot that swallows the submarine whole. A few Russian captains, the paranoid or the experienced, began to suspect the truth. They knew the Americans had submarines in the Atlantic. They knew the Virginia-class boats were capable of extraordinary stealth. But even knowing this, even suspecting that something was down there, they were powerless to do anything about it. You cannot shoot what you cannot see. You cannot evade what you cannot detect, and you cannot admit in an official report to Moscow that your ship was defeated by a ghost. The psychological toll was perhaps the most effective weapon of all. The knowledge that something was down there, invisible and untouchable, transformed every voyage into an ordeal of paranoia. Captains began second-guessing their instruments, their charts, their own senses. Crews reported hearing strange sounds through the hull at night. Metallic tapping, low-frequency hums, vibrations that had no obvious source. Some of these were real, caused by the submarine's UUVs maneuvering near the hull. Others were imagined, the product of exhausted minds in a hostile environment. But the effect was the same: doubt, fear, and the slow erosion of confidence. By mid-January, the pipeline to Cuba had effectively collapsed. Cuba, that last defiant outpost of the Cold War, survives on oil. Not Cuban oil. The island's reserves are negligible. Russian oil. Venezuelan oil when the regime in Caracas has any to spare. For decades, this lifeline has sustained the island's economy, powered its electrical grid, fueled its vehicles. Without it, the lights go out. The hospitals lose power. The food supply chain breaks down. And, right now, on January 16, 2026, Cuba is running on fumes. The last major fuel shipment arrived in early December. Since then, nothing. The Shadow Fleet tankers that were supposed to replenish the island's reserves have either turned back or simply vanished from tracking systems, sitting dead in the water in the middle of the Atlantic while their captains argue with Moscow about phantom reefs and malfunctioning GPS. The Cuban government has not made any public statements. They never do. But the signs are visible for anyone paying attention. Blackouts rolling through Havana, rationing of gasoline, factories shutting down due to lack of diesel. This is not an accident. This is not a natural disaster. This is the result of a deliberate, invisible campaign of disruption that has been unfolding beneath the surface of the Atlantic for months. A campaign that uses no missiles, no torpedoes, no dramatic acts of violence, just patience, just technology, just the slow, methodical application of pressure until the target collapses under its own weight. The genius of ghosting is not in its complexity. It is in its deniability. When a submarine fires a torpedo, there is evidence. Debris, witnesses, satellite imagery of the explosion, international condemnation, diplomatic consequences. But when a tanker simply stops and turns back, citing technical difficulties, when a captain reports that his navigation system malfunctioned in the middle of the ocean, there is nothing to point to. No smoking gun, no proof of hostile action, just a series of unfortunate coincidences that, taken together, form a pattern of economic strangulation. The Russian government cannot publicly admit what is happening, because doing so would be an admission of weakness. It would reveal that their so-called unstoppable shadow fleet is being systematically dismantled by American submarines that they cannot detect, cannot engage, and cannot stop. It would confirm that the United States has achieved a level of underwater dominance that makes the Cold War submarine campaigns look primitive by comparison. And so Moscow remains silent. The tankers continue to sail, or try to. The submarines continue to hunt, and Cuba continues to starve. The tactical elegance of this operation is difficult to overstate. Traditional naval blockades require massive resources: aircraft carriers, destroyers, patrol aircraft, thousands of personnel. They are visible, expensive, and politically contentious. Ghosting requires a handful of submarines, operating autonomously with minimal external support. The submarines can remain on station for months at a time, their nuclear reactors providing effectively unlimited endurance. They surface only to receive new orders via encrypted satellite burst transmissions, then disappear back into the depths. They are invisible to satellites, invisible to surface ships, invisible to everything except the most sophisticated sonar arrays. And even those can be defeated with proper positioning. But the real power of ghosting lies in what it represents: a shift in the fundamental nature of naval warfare. For centuries, control of the sea meant control of the surface. The nation with the largest fleet, the most guns, the fastest ships, could dictate the terms of engagement. But in the 21st century, control of the sea increasingly means control of the subsurface. The ability to move unseen, to strike without warning, to deny the enemy the use of the ocean without ever revealing your presence. The Virginia-class submarine is the apotheosis of this philosophy. It is not designed to win dramatic battles. It is designed to make battles unnecessary, to apply pressure so subtly, so persistently that the enemy simply gives up, to create a zone of control so absolute that the enemy stops even trying to challenge it. And right now, in the North Atlantic, that zone of control is expanding. There are reports, unconfirmed, classified, whispered about in the secure conference rooms of NATO headquarters, that the ghosting protocol is being applied to more than just Russian tankers, that Chinese cargo ships attempting to deliver goods to sanctioned regimes are experiencing similar navigation anomalies, that North Korean vessels smuggling coal and weapons are mysteriously turning back mid-voyage, that the entire concept of unrestricted maritime commerce, the foundation of global trade since the end of World War II, is being quietly rewritten by a handful of submarines that most people don't even know exist. This is the new reality of great power competition. Not fought with armies clashing on battlefields, not decided by airstrikes and artillery barrages, but executed in the silent, crushing darkness of the deep ocean, where the rules are written by whoever can stay invisible the longest. The submariners themselves rarely talk about their missions. They are bound by security clearances that make even discussing the general nature of their work a potential felony. But in the rare moments when they do speak, usually years after retirement, they describe a kind of warfare that is more psychological than kinetic. A game of cat and mouse played in total darkness, where the first side to make a sound loses. Where victory is measured not in enemy ships sunk, but in enemy ships that never leave port in the first place. They describe the eerie sensation of sitting beneath a tanker's hull, so close that you can hear the vibrations of its engine through your own hull, feeling the turbulence of its propeller wash buffeting the submarine's control surfaces. They describe the tension of maintaining that position for hours, sometimes days, knowing that a single mistake, a slight miscalculation of depth, a momentary drift out of the acoustic shadow, could reveal their presence and trigger an international incident. They describe the strange intimacy of it. You learn the rhythms of the target ship. You know when the crew changes, shifts. You can hear through the hydrophones the muffled sounds of life aboard the vessel, voices, footsteps, the clang of metal on metal. You become a silent observer of their world, invisible and omnipresent. And when the UUV is deployed, when the acoustic spoofing begins, you hear the sudden change, the engines slowing, the shouting, the alarm klaxons, and you know that somewhere above you a captain is staring at his instruments in disbelief, realizing that something is very, very wrong but unable to explain what. It is, they say, the closest thing to being a ghost that a living person can experience. The future of this technology is both obvious and terrifying. Right now, ghosting is being used as a tool of economic pressure, a way to enforce blockades without firing a shot. But the same techniques could be applied to any surface vessel. Imagine a carrier strike group operating in contested waters, confident in its sensor picture, believing itself to be alone, while beneath each ship in the formation, a submarine sits and watches. Imagine the chaos that could be unleashed if those submarines decided to switch from observation to action. Not sinking the carriers, that would be an act of war, but simply disrupting their navigation systems, spoofing their sonar, feeding false data to their combat systems until the entire formation was paralyzed by uncertainty. This is the nightmare scenario that keeps naval strategists awake at night. Not the dramatic, decisive battle, but the slow realization that your sensors can be deceived, your systems can be manipulated, and your billion-dollar warship can be rendered impotent by an enemy you cannot see and cannot fight. And it is happening right now in the Atlantic to the Russian Shadow Fleet. The irony is almost poetic. For years, Russia has prided itself on its submarine force, its silent hunters prowling the depths, its technological prowess in underwater warfare. And now, that same doctrine is being turned against them by a nation that has spent decades perfecting the art of invisibility. The United States did not invent submarine warfare, but it has, in the 21st century, perfected it to a degree that borders on the supernatural. The end result is clear. Cuba will not receive its fuel. The Shadow Fleet will continue to be harassed, disrupted, and ultimately broken. And Moscow will be forced to make a choice. Continue sending tankers into the Atlantic, knowing they will be intercepted by an enemy they cannot fight, or accept the reality of American undersea dominance and find another way to sustain their allies. Either way, the message has been sent. The message is not delivered by diplomats or broadcast on international news. It is communicated in the silence of the abyss, in the ghost contacts that vanish from sonar screens, in the navigation systems that suddenly stop working in the middle of the ocean. The message is simple. We see you. We are beneath you. And you cannot stop us. The most dangerous weapon in the Atlantic is not the one you see on the surface, bristling with missiles and radar arrays. It is not the aircraft carrier, the destroyer, the patrol plane. It is the one breathing right under your feet. the one you will never hear coming. The one that has already been there for hours, listening, watching, waiting. It is the submarine that has become your shadow,